He was 27, a global icon, a reluctant voice of a generation. Then came silence. What really happened to Kurt Cobain, the man behind Smells Like Teen Spirit? In this video we explore his life, his inner battles and the unanswered mystery that still lingers in millions of minds today. Kurt Cobain never set out to change the world. He only wanted to make music that was raw, loud and painfully honest. But in the early 1990s that honesty sparked something bigger than he ever imagined. When Nevermind released in 1991, it dethroned Michael Jackson from the top of the Billboard chart. Almost overnight, Nirvana became the anthem of a generation filled with doubt, and Kurt was forced into the role of its unwilling leader. With greasy hair, oversized sweaters, and eyes that reflected both fury and sorrow, he became the face of grunge. Fame was never the goal. The louder the crowd cheered, the more alone he felt inside. Behind every magazine cover and packed stadium was a man who had never truly found his place. Not in school, not in the music industry, not even within himself. Born in 1967, in the small town of Aberdeen, Washington, Kurt was raised in a working-class environment, surrounded by classic rock, raw punk energy, and domestic instability. His parents divorced when he was just 9 years old. That split carved a deep scar into his emotional world. Yet through all the pain and confusion, music remained the one thing that never betrayed him. This video is not just about the way Kurt Cobain's life ended. It is about the weight of living inside his mind and the parts of his story that remain painfully unclear. Fame came fast. Too fast. By 1992, Kurt Cobain was everywhere. On magazine covers, MTV, global tours, Smells Like Teen Spirit became an anthem. But to Kurt, it felt like a parody of punk. He once said, "I don't blame the average 17-year-old punk kid for calling me a sellout. I understand that." Deep down, he didn't want to lead a movement. He just wanted to scream into the void. As Nirvana's fame exploded, so did Kurt's discomfort. He suffered from chronic stomach pain, which no doctor could diagnose, pain that pushed him towards self-medication. He once said, "If it wasn't for heroin, I would have killed myself a long time ago." It wasn't just physical pain, it was emotional weight, anxiety, trauma, the pressure of being the voice of Gen X. Behind closed doors, the weight of expectation became unbearable. He felt misunderstood, by fans, by the media, even by his own bandmates. In interviews, his voice was soft, thoughtful, almost fragile, a stark contrast to the explosive energy on stage. He married Courtney Love in 1992, and that union drew tabloid frenzy. Their relationship was intense, chaotic, and to many, toxic. The media framed them as the Sid and Nancy of the 90s, addicted, volatile, and doomed. But to Kurt, Courtney was one of the few who understood his darkness. That same year, they welcomed their daughter Frances Bean Cobain. Fatherhood could have been an anchor, but for Kurt, it became another mirror of his inner fears. Would he become like his own parents, distant, broken? He wrote in his journal, "I don't want her to be screwed up like I was. I want her to be happy." But happiness was elusive. While the world celebrated his music, Kurt was collapsing inside. He hated interviews, he feared stadium tours, he even resented some fans for not understanding the meaning behind Nirvana's lyrics. To many, he was a rebel rock star, but in reality, he was a poet trapped in a machine he couldn't control. And by early 1994, the cracks were no longer just emotional, they were visible to everyone. In March 1994, something snapped. While on tour in Europe, Kurt was found unconscious in a hotel room in Rome. Official reports described it as a medical emergency involving champagne and Rohypnol, but those close to him knew this wasn't the first time Kurt had shown signs of wanting to escape. It was a quiet cry for help. After returning to the US, his loved ones staged an intervention. Friends, bandmates, and even Courtney begged him to check into rehab. On March 30, he entered the Exodus Recovery Center in Los Angeles. But just 2 days later, he escaped, hopping the fence, disappearing without a word. The next week, no one could find him. Not his wife, not his label, not his band. Then, on April 8, 1994, an electrician arrived at Kurt's Seattle home to install a security system. What he discovered would change the music world forever. Kurt Cobain had passed away. A note was left behind. A profound silence followed, one that echoed through generations. The official report described it as a tragic loss caused by a self-inflicted injury, age 27. He joined the infamous 27 Club. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, all legends, all gone too soon. But the silence didn't end there. Almost immediately, rumors began to swirl. Why was the toxicology report so high in heroin that he shouldn't have been able to pull the trigger? Why did the note seem to talk about leaving music, not life? Who wrote the note? Was it all Kurt's words? Documentaries like Kurt and Courtney and Soaked in Bleach fueled conspiracy theories. Some pointed fingers at Courtney Love. Others questioned the thoroughness of the investigation. The Seattle police ruled it tragic loss. But for many fans, friends, and researchers, something still doesn't add up. Even today, nearly 3 decades later, the debate continues. Was Kurt's death a tragic choice? Or was it something more, a cover-up, a mistake, a truth buried in pain? What we do know is this: Kurt left behind one final note, written in shaky handwriting on red stationery. He quoted Neil Young, "It's better to burn out than to fade away." But those who loved him knew, Kurt didn't want to burn out. He just didn't know how to stay. His passing wasn't just the loss of a musician, it was the loss of a soul who spoke for millions who felt unheard. And the silence he left behind, it still echoes in every garage band, every thrifted flannel, every scream that turns into a whisper. Kurt Cobain died young, but his impact never aged. He didn't just write music, he wrote emotion. Every line he sang, from "I'm so happy 'cause today I found my friends" to "I feel stupid and contagious," became gospel for a generation that felt misunderstood. Kurt gave voice to pain that didn't have a name, to depression no one dared talk about, to the gray zone between success and emptiness, and though his life ended in 1994, his influence still breathes through culture. Musically, Nevermind reshaped the sound of the 1990s. Bands like Foo Fighters, Radiohead, and even Billie Eilish credit him as a soul influence. His rawness made vulnerability powerful, his chaos made silence meaningful. Aesthetically, he helped redefine masculinity. Unwashed sweaters, chipped nail polish, fragile smiles. Kurt wasn't afraid to look small, broken, unsure, and in doing so, he gave others permission to be real. On a personal level, his daughter Frances Bean Cobain became the quiet carrier of his legacy. She didn't try to be her father, she tried to understand him, just like the rest of us. Today you'll find Kurt in museums, on murals, in university lectures, in fashion runways, and deep within the DNA of indie and alternative rock. But more importantly, you'll find him in bedrooms at 2 a.m. when someone puts on All Apologies and finally feels less alone. Kurt once said, "I'd rather be hated for who I am than loved for who I am not." That's why he matters. Not because he sold millions of records, but because he told the truth, even when it hurt. And that truth still resonates with anyone who's ever felt out of place, too loud, too soft, too sensitive, too much. Kurt Cobain didn't fade away, he became part of us. Maybe that's why Kurt Cobain still matters. Because his story wasn't perfect. It wasn't scripted. It was messy, raw, human. And for millions of people who grew up feeling too quiet, too emotional, too lost for this world, Kurt didn't just sing to them, he sang for them. His death left questions, but his life left something deeper. A reminder that art doesn't have to be polished to be powerful. That vulnerability is not weakness. And that pain, when spoken out loud, can become something others hold on to. Today we don't just remember Kurt, we remember what he stood for. Honesty, imperfection, truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. Now we want to hear from you. Did Kurt's music ever help you feel less alone? Do you remember where you were when you first heard Nirvana? Or maybe you discovered him years later and still felt the weight of his words. Share your story in the comments. Let's keep this conversation human. Because Kurt's voice may be gone, but the echo is still here. Thank you for watching, and if this meant something to you, we hope you'll stick around. There are more stories that deserve to be told, the kind that don't fade away.